Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to finally take this device and put it to good use. So let's get to it. This device is the Color Checker Passport Photo 2, and it is a great device that you can use to calibrate your cameras. And this is going to be able to help you get perfect color just right out of camera. That's really loud. But anyway, perfect color right out of camera every time. But the problem is, of course, it can be a bit of a pain to do. So why would we do this? Well, the first thing that I can think of for an outdoor photographer, why we would want to do this, is if we had two different cameras and we wanted to get some kind of basis of understanding about how to get the color just clicked in so they are the same color between both cameras. Certainly there is a studio use for this. If you're a studio photographer and things like that, where whether you're shooting models, you're shooting still lifes, those kinds of things would be very easy. You have very controlled lighting, very controlled everything, and so it's just really easy to say, hey, this makes sense to do this, to throw that color checker chart into the, you've seen these pictures of models holding the color checker chart in front of them, and totally makes sense to do that kind of process in that type of scenario. But for the outdoor photographer, why would we do this? It could feel like it just gets in the way, and it really disrupts the flow of our creativity. And the whole idea that I'm looking for here is to say, look, if we have two cameras, three cameras, whatever, and we want to balance the color between those two cameras, if we know we have a color difference between those two cameras, we could think about doing this actually maybe just one time, so at least we have a foundation. And that foundation is going to bring those cameras in alignment as it relates to what they need to do for their color to have really similar, if not equal, color coming out of each camera. And then, of course, you can make your changes accordingly to whatever lighting scenario that you have. Because certainly when you do this type of thing, when you're calibrating your cameras, you have a lot of things to be thinking about. Not only do you have the actual camera body itself, because it does color its own way, you have the lens. The lens affects color in its own way as well. And then, of course, you have the lighting scenario that you're in. Whether you're outdoors in bright sunshiny, whether you're in the shade, whether you have it's a deep, sunset type colors. All those different color variables will affect certainly how color is rendered and how color is interpreted and all these kinds of things that go along with that. And when we do a calibration setup, we can pretty much guarantee we're going to get at least scientifically perfect color for whatever lighting conditions we're in. But certainly we want to always put in that notion, okay, what's the artistically perfect color? What does my creativity say about this color? So backtracking again, I'm looking at, this is the idea, this is the use case where I'm saying, if you've got two cameras, this could be really valuable to you as an outdoor photographer. If you have two cameras and you wanted to synchronize them so they have the exact same color, or at least very similar color coming through. All right, so as we get onto the website here, I'm on the Calibrate website and I have the product brought up. Now they do say it's out of stock. You can look for this at B&H, you can, any other photo house, whatever. And also, many times your device, the calibration device that you purchase, it will come with a little chart as well that looks, basically what we're looking for is this little 24 patch chart right there. That's what we're going to be using when we do our processing here. So we've got this 24 patch chart. Whether it's the really small one that came with your calibration device, maybe it's one of the really big ones that you've seen those pictures where the model's holding something or whatever. Anything along those lines, we just need that 24 patch. So it happens to come in this device. The other beautiful thing about this device, well, it has these other items up here, which I'm not going to get into for this video. But also on the flip side, it's got this weird hinge that is really stiff. But you have this gray swatch and the white swatch there, which can be great for just doing quick color temperature items. It's in a nice hard case, got a little lanyard that came with it. It's just a really nice little device for it to protect itself, and you can take it out there in the field with you. All right, so once you are taking a look at this, you have this product in hand. As you go down, they have all these kinds of things and saying, hey, I need the software. Well, what you want to do is you want to get yourself to this software, this software page. So calibrate.com/US/software downloads. Now, certainly if you're in a different country, it may be different for you. And we're looking for this specific item right here, color checker, camera calibration. And so I have already downloaded this. So let's go ahead and switch over to that where I have the download right here. Now I've already downloaded this, and so here we are with the zip. Now I should say, as this is unzipping, a little bit of a disclaimer here for you. This is literally the first time I've done this. So I am walking through this just like you would walk through this brand spanking new, although you have this video to follow along with. And this is literally the first time I've done this. So if I mess up, if I do something wrong, you're going to see that, and you're going to hopefully be able to learn from my mistakes, and you can certainly do better by learning from my mistakes here. All right, so we have the installer. Certainly I'm on a Mac. They have it certainly for the Windows systems as well. But let's go ahead and run that installer. All right, I'll continue. It just says, yep, we need this, and it's all coming together just fine with, I'll agree to that. It needs 506 megabytes. Yikes, that's a big software app. But all right, we'll do this. All right, finishing the installation. Now there's supposed to also be a Lightroom plugin. Whether or not that is actually part of this installer or not, I actually don't know. So we're going to see what happens if it's going to tell me about the Lightroom plugin. All right, the installation was successful. Let's close that. I'm actually going to keep it because I have other things I need to do with this later this evening with some my online training group. We're going to have a live session. I'm going to go through this whole thing with them. But now that we have that all loaded up, let's go ahead and just open this up and see what it tells us, see what it's going to ask for. Now, certainly, I also don't have this shot on my camera just yet, so I'm going to go out and get a shot so I can bring that in. I have the Canon R5, and I'll be bringing that file in here shortly. Okay, this is interesting because it's sensing the fact that I have one of my monitors. I have a 2-monitor setup, and it's sensing that one of the monitors, the calibration is older than a month. And so on this one over here, I actually calibrated somewhat recently, and so they're just giving me a little warning. If it's older than 30 days, if that calibration is older than 30 days, then you might have something to be thinking about. You want to update that calibration. I'm not going to worry about that at this time. I can even click this so it does not check on startup, and I think I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll hit OK here. All right, so camera calibration. Let's read this really quick. Create a DNG profile representing a single lighting condition. The profile is specific to an individual make of camera. Drag a DNG file into the image pane. Color checker camera calibration will attempt to automatically detect the color checker in the image. If auto detection fails, click on the corners, blah, blah, blah. All right, click the Create Profile button, give the profile a name, and click Save. The profile will be saved to the specific location. All right, so this is interesting. I'm going to need a DNG file. So basically, I'm going to end up using Lightroom to make my DNG file, and then I'll bring that into here, and then I'll get that ICC profile. But what I'd also like to find out about is they talk about on their website this Lightroom plugin that's supposed to completely automate this whole process. And so it doesn't look like it's part of this installer that I got, but we have this dual illuminant DNG. Let's take a look at that. Dual illuminant DNG profile is a single DNG profile representing 2 lighting conditions. This profile can be applied to images taken in a wider variety of lighting. I like this idea because what's going to happen here, we're going to be looking at, just as it says here, varieties of lighting, and so it's going to balance that idea out. So if you are wanting to balance it out from daylight to shadow and just give you the best idea of what's in between there, then you're going to be able to do that. That's kind of nice. I can also do this via a TIFF method. So if I had to open up my file and bring it into Photoshop, make a TIFF image out of it, I could certainly do that too, and it'll do the same thing basically for me. I do want to go off of the DNG though. So I'm going to go ahead and go grab a picture of this color checker chart with my camera, and then I'll be back here and we will continue on. Okay, I'm back and I've got these items brought up here in the import dialog box in Lightroom, and I'm going to go ahead and hit this button, copy as DNG, because I want them, of course, to be translated to DNG so that I can then use the color checker software to then make my profile. So what we want to look at here is I got 3 different shots, and let me go ahead and just import these first, I suppose. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that button. And so with these 3 different shots, I'll go ahead and increase my thumbnail size just so we can see them a little bit larger. Let's take a look at the exact numbers that I have here. So 200 ISO, 105 millimeters, so I was zooming in all the way on my lens, and f5.6, and then that is in the neighborhood of 1/25th of a second. And then as I come to this one over here, I'm at 100th of a second, and then this one should be a little bit faster, so 1/60th of a second. So what I wanted to do there is make sure that something going on with the metering was not messing up. Now, quite frankly, what I probably should have done, this is where you can learn from my mistakes. I should have photographed that gray square, and I can take a look, rectangle, and I can take a look at the histogram as I'm photographing it, and I can be able to just get that right in the center. Then I know I've got a really good exposure if I can just put that right in the center. Well, another thing I can do, I can get into the develop module, and then I can just mouse over this item. Actually, it's this item here, where it's telling me, all right, it is 80.1%. See, this is where I wish it would give it to me in RGB values. So basically from 0 to 255, because I know exactly what I'm trying to look for when I am, see here I'm at really close to 95%, which is pure white. You know, this should be a white item, so 100% is what we're looking for. So this one at 63%, this one at 40-some%. So this one here is going to be the middle gray. This 4th one over is going to be the middle gray, and so we're looking to target middle gray with that. So since this is at 63%, that tells me it's going to be considered slightly a little more exposure than it needs to be. So this one here is a little bit brighter, of course, and so that brings us up to roughly the 70% line, and then this one should take us down, and we're really close to the 50% line. I'm going to go ahead and consider this one to be my good one, basically. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this one, I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to click on this show in Finder, and then it should bring it up for me in the Finder so I can have access just to the file itself. There it is. I'll slide Lightroom off to the side here, and I will take this, and it says it wants me to drag and drop a DNG here. All right, so here's my target DNG file. And so let's see what happens here. It's going to load the image, and it should automatically select or be able to find the chart. And what it's going to look for, it should look for those items on the edge. Basically, you see how it puts these little dots here? It found these little corners here. And then we can see the green overlays. These are going to be the items where it's, within the swatch kind of a thing. But we should also be able to grab that and just stretch that out a little bit more so it can get more in the center of these items. You can see how it's kind of transitioning and transforming this item, this green overlay. And so now I'm grabbing really the central location of every one of those swatches for the most part. It's a little bit off center here. I'm not going to worry so much about that, quite frankly. What are these other buttons that we can do? I have a zoom option, so if I were really zoomed out, I could zoom into it. We've got this remove crop marks, not going to worry about that. Color checker SG or color checker, probably this is going to be the different one for the different format, the classic 24. That's the one we're on because we have the 24 swatches going on here. So if I had the one that even has more swatches, I think it's 72 swatches it has, I could use that, and yeah, that would be pretty incredible. All right, so take a look too. It has auto cropped. Here's my original image, and it has auto cropped right into that area. It got rid of all this other stuff. Now I should also just kind of describe the lighting scenario that I was in. It was just open shade. It's a bright sunshiny day here today, and so I just placed this actually on the cover of my crawl space for the house. And so that white field around it is just the cover for the crawl space to the house, and it's just in open shade. So we would characterize that as a very cool lighting scenario. So whatever calibration I do right now, this is going to be great for that cool lighting scenario. But just think about it a little bit here. If we were to create this calibration under 2 different cameras, or I should say for 2 different cameras, we then assign that appropriate calibration to the file in Lightroom, we're then going to have a great starting point where those 2 cameras, the 2 pieces of data coming from those cameras, are going to be nearly identical reproduction of color. They will still be way off compared to whatever other lighting scenario you put your cameras into and you're shooting under. But at least you have that starting point, which you can then modify. And of course, you could do this for every lighting scenario if you wanted to. So, all right, let's hit this button that says Create Profile. And so it wants to put it under camera profiles. So that's my username, my user account, library, application support, Adobe, camera raw, camera profiles. That's actually probably exactly where I want it to go, because that's where Lightroom is likely to go and look for it to pick it up. So I've got Canon EOS R5. It's the only one I have. If I had multiple R5s or whatever the case, I'd go ahead and put in a little number in there, but it's the only one I have. So I'm just going to leave it as that. And let's just go ahead and hit save. So it's doing something. I didn't think it would take this long to save the profile, because ICC profiles, all right, it says it was created successfully. Applications using this profile may need to be restarted before the profile can be used. All right, so let's see what happens there. So we're going to look at this area here called Profile in Lightroom, and rather than Adobe Landscape or whatever the other ones I might normally want to choose, I can go over here and hit Browse. And then we have just all of the basic ones available to us, but we want to look at this little plus sign here. It's possibly a little bit, innocuous, but let's go ahead and hit Import Profiles. And then we want to go back to Camera Profiles. And so we can pick this item up here. Now that's interesting. It's called it a DCP. I would have expected it to say ICC, but that's okay. I'm just learning something just as you are. I did that is a special file apparently just for the camera. So it's called a DNG camera profile file. So there we go, DCP. All right, we're going to hit import. So there it is. We did have to quit Lightroom and then restart Lightroom in order to make this work. So let's review that super quick once again. So we went over here, we went to browse, we told it to add it by importing here, but the problem is that once it was imported, it still wasn't showing up in my list. So now what I have here is under where this section is here, this new one here came in, says profiles. See, I have user profiles, whatever these things are. I knew I didn't want to mess with that because I knew that was wrong, but here it just says Canon EOS, so there it is. So let's assign that one, and you can see here now it says Canon EOS on that. And so I should be able to now come and change between that and landscape or whatever. So let's, landscape is my normal profile. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And wow, look at the difference between these blues, especially this blue here, the green a little bit, the red is about identical. Quite frankly, I expected that, having done manual process calibration on cameras before. Canon cameras tend to be really rich in the red and really pretty much spot on in the reds, historically speaking, from the ones that I've done and the experience that I've had in the lighting areas that I've done it in. But now I need to hit browse once again. I need to go find my Canon EOS, and I just mouse over it and it gives me a preview. So really it's in the blues. Take a look at what's happening in the blues. That's just amazing how that works. And so now I've got this camera profile. Let's go ahead and hit close. And that was a pretty easy process to make this come through, and now it's applicable here in my Lightroom, which is just delightful. It's great to have. All right, now let's check on that Lightroom plugin to where it should automate this process for us. So let's take a quick look and see what we're doing there. So I did a little bit of extra reading here on the website for their Color Checker Passport Lightroom plugin is missing. And it talks about it here. It says, It should. Now, this would have been nice if they had told us this on import, or if there was some other type of instructions that we could have read while we were actually installing this. I didn't see any of those items. Maybe there's actually there in the downloads folder. Let's go take a quick gander at the downloads folder, and under the zip file that came in, actually it's not there, because the only thing that the zip file released was, or opened up, was the installer. So there was no instructions that helped me understand where this thing was going, if it was going to be installed at all or anything along those lines. So let's take a look here. Under my Lightroom file menu item, what I can quickly look at is under Plugin Manager. All right, when I do that, I can see here color checker camera calibration is right there. It is ready to go. Okay, so now what we would need to do is, okay, what do we do? How do we manage this? How do we make this work? And so it all comes down to the export area. What we're going to look at here under X-Write results, we have this preset here for what we're going to be looking at for our exporting. All right, so our color checker DNG profile name, I'll just do plugin test so that I know it's extremely different. For the profile name that's going to come out, it says the profile generated will only be selectable for images created with the same camera model. Well, I suppose that's good. Enter a meaningful name that describes the shooting conditions this profile represents. Okay, we got it. It's plugin test. That's great. We got the dual illuminant option there. We've got the using a custom DNG profile type items. It's telling us under the old process of where to find it. It's no longer in the camera calibration. It's up here, as we've already seen. All right, and then we have other instructions. Display calibration. Yes, we already know that one of my screens is older than 30 days. So, okay. All right, so I can register, and then they have their own online training, it looks like. All right, but really it's quite simple. I just give it a name, and then I read through these items that it's just warning me about, telling me about. I then hit the old export. Now I'm doing the exact same file, so I would certainly expect the exact same results. If I had chosen one of these other files where I had a little bit more light coming in, I would then expect a little bit different results, because it's going to have to compensate for the brightness value too. That's why we want to make sure our exposure is as spot on perfect as it could possibly ever get. All right, the profile has been generated successfully. Lightroom must be restarted to activate the profile. All right, so it says it's still processing profile, so I'm going to wait to restart Lightroom. All right, so let's go ahead, and now we're going to quit Lightroom, and then we'll bring it right back up, and we'll take a look once it comes back up. All right, we're back into Lightroom, and I'm in the Develop module. I come over here from my profile where I can hit Browse now, and certainly I have two under this Profiles item. So I have the plugin test, and then I have the Canon EOS R5, which, like I said, I use the exact same file. As we can see, they are identical. Of course, they're identical. I use the same file, the same process is being used. But that was even easier. I'm right here in Lightroom. All I have to do is hit this export. It goes out. It does its magic. It creates the profile in the hard drive system where it files it away where it needs to. And then the only little caveat to this whole thing is Lightroom's need to be shut down and restarted in order to actually use this profile. If we didn't have to do that, that would just make this completely seamless and just amazingly awesome. All right, so do please let me know if you have any questions. Leave them below in the comments. Let me know if you've got other thoughts, other ideas. Let's discuss this a little bit. I may even cover this on my podcast, your questions, that is. I may even cover on my podcast, that is the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast. If you haven't listened recently, look it up in your podcast app or here on YouTube. You can also listen here on YouTube and give it a listen. We've got lots of great things coming through, and it used to be called Latitude Photography Podcast. I just recently, here in summer of 2022, I've rebranded the podcast as the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast to better hone in on what we do there as far as the conversations we're having, and just really to help you understand precisely what we're talking about. Our goal is to help you understand what your point and purpose is in photography as it relates to the great outdoors, and to get out there and do it more. And then whatever challenges you have, let's help you get over those challenges. Let's help you work through them and be able to communicate your intent, communicate your point and purpose for being out there and making these awesome photographs of the great outdoors. That's it for today. Until next time, happy shooting.